All right, guys, we're back with RACE22 podcast. This is April 13th, 2020, the most dreaded year to date in my life. Anyways, I was born in 1982, so I've lived through a few things, but nothing quite like this coronavirus COVID-19 deal that we're living through now. Got Roger Johnson, my compadre here. He's on the other line here from his home in Mooresville, North Carolina. Roger, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah,
It's not really a show. It's more like me and you just keep chatting throughout the day 10 or 15 times. I love it.
Honestly, people would probably rather listen to our conversations when we're just talking and not on air. Of course, those kinds of things got Kyle Larson kicked out of NASCAR, so we probably should not do that.
Wow. He went right there, all the way right in the beginning.
I mean, listen, people would have been disappointed if we didn't at least hit the fact that happened. And for those
the high spots,
for those of you in the dark, Kyle Larson delivered a racial slur during a race on iRacing. I think it was some race at Monza or something. I don't keep up with iRacing, but I certainly have seen my fair share of the videos from this instance, anyways. And he was suspended from NASCAR, suspended from iRacing, which that's hilarious in itself, but that's a whole nother story for another day. Of course, he was suspended from his team. He's lost several of his sponsors, McDonald's, Credit One Bank, others. Of course, his sprint car sponsors, hanging in there tight. So. I can see both sides of that. I can see where big corporations are trying to protect themselves from that, and smaller businesses are like, hey, we understand this guy made a mistake, and we're going to roll on down the road. So I see both sides of that. I know we talked about it a little bit before we turned the hit the record button here, but you got any thoughts about that deal?
Bad deal on everybody's part, right? Like, I mean, I've heard more people say more things, taken out of context. And I'm not saying this wasn't taken out of context or is taken out of context. I'm just saying that man, just another black eye on the gig that we really don't need.
Yeah, it's definitely something that NASCAR didn't need, but I guess it didn't matter if you were a Drive for Diversity California kid or not when you say things like that. So
that was the thing I found the most intriguing, right? I mean, that was a big part of him getting there, and I don't know. It seemed to have gotten abandoned. I'm not real sure, but
yeah.
We've all probably had one or two things in our careers that we've done that we're not proud of, and I'm sure this will be another one of those. And then I'm just interested as how it gets handled going down the thing. Do they persecute him for life, or is it okay, you messed up and moving on? But when my son, who he games some online, and when he brings me down videos to see of esports guys that are not even racing guys that are just pummeling him. Just pummeling Kyle Larson, and I'm sad because I think it leaves a black eye on our sport.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I mean, I don't want to go too far down this subject, obviously, because that's not our thing. Late model racing is our thing, and I don't want to harp on this because I think he's getting enough. I think he's getting enough good and bad out of this.
Right.
On his own, mostly bad. So,
on a brighter note, though, some things seem to be legitimately possibly opening up sooner than what we had thought, or possibly the timeline's really close to what we had thought.
Yeah, I mean, that timeline's a moving target, so I think, we talked about it last week. I think I kind of surprised you with the fact that, I thought it was going to be 6 weeks from last week, and, now we're, 5 weeks from that time period, and it may, that timeline may decrease or increase depending on where you're at, in the world. Seems like the peak times are moving by a few days. North Carolina's backed up a few days. Virginia's backed up a few days. Seems like some of the other states, though, they're more than ready to kind of open things back up and get life back to some sort of normal, even if it is with mask and continuing hand sanitizer and wipes and washing your hands, which I'm all for, that part for sure. People need to wash their hands, but it seems like that target date could be a little different from place to place. I still think that what I said last week, and Charlie Hansen, of course, agreed with me. The timeline that we were looking at, kind of heading toward Memorial Day weekend. I still think that's a very viable timeline. I also think, and this is something I actually thought about after the show last week, not even before we started seeing that the timeline could open up a little sooner. I think that it's possible that they wait until after Memorial Day weekend to open it back up, like maybe that Tuesday. Just given the fact that Memorial Day weekend would be a huge weekend for people to be around each other, and that would give them another kind of opportunity for people to social distance. So we'll see what happens there. I can tell you, from my standpoint as part-time promoter, I do this RACE22 thing, and we have a late model racer, but I also try to promote a few races. Got a mini stock tour, working on another tour right now, and got Franklin County Speedway for a few races this season. And I can tell you, either Saturday May 23rd or Sunday May 24th, I'm gonna figure out a way to race. So that's
my man threw down the gauntlet right there.
That's my goal. I mean, now listen, we may have to do it without fans. I may have to run one division so I don't have too many people in the infield. Whatever it takes, though. But I can tell you this: I am stocked up. I've been working on this little by little, but I am stocked up on mask. I am stocked up on hand sanitizer. I am stocked up on wipes. I'm ready. I'm ready for the opportunity in which for us to go forward in a little different way than we normally do, because I think that's what it's going to take once this is over with anyways. So, I want to be as prepared as possible and be as responsible as possible moving forward. And I think a lot of racetracks, I talked to 2 or 3 racetrack promoters today, and every one of them that I talked to, either agreed with me and hadn't thought about how that was going to play out, or had already thought about how that was going to play out and was already working on getting those supplies themselves. And another thing that I found very interesting in the conversation today was one of the promoters that I talked to was thinking about, over the next 2 weeks, doing an invitation only pay-per-view. Which I got a feeling is something that's gonna come down the pike. I've actually thought about it. I mean, we've talked about it.
You and I talked about it a bunch, right?
Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. I mean, my May 24th date, if we're not open back by then, that's probably kind of how that event's gonna play out. Don't know what kind of cars, don't know exactly what we're gonna do, but I mean, people are desperate for some content. I mean, that's why we're doing this podcast, because people are like, man, there's nothing going on, and of course, I'm not saying that I'm a one-man band, so to speak, with RACE22, but, all the rest of my guys have real jobs. You know what I mean? They don't work in racing every day, or at least don't work for RACE22 every day. And, so I'm, I don't know what to write about. I mean, I got a couple opinion things, but, I mean, eventually people are going to get tired of hearing my opinion, or reading it or whatever. But, I think that... I think that this podcast is a good way for us to catch up, daily on things. And we are working on guests. We didn't have anybody lined up for today. And we're kind of late tonight, putting this together because I've been working. Roger's been, I don't know what the heck he's been doing.
I can't ever catch a break with you.
Well, I mean, listen, you might have been working. I just don't know it. So that's all I'm saying. Okay?
That's it. I still been in Performance Center every day. I don't know if I should be, but I still have been. And, I think we all got to keep working a little bit. You can't just quit.
I mean, I think I'm going to have to come down there one day next week and do a live show, and
sure.
We have to stay 6 feet apart and, kind of play the game here. So,
that's it.
But, that's something, and that's something, I hadn't actually talked to you about that, but that's something I've been thinking about, too, is, possibly going down there. But, going back into this past weekend, I had an interesting weekend. went down, started doing a little bit of work Friday, at Franklin County. Didn't do a whole lot, but did a little bit, and ended up having a couple cars test on Saturday. They've been, wearing me out about it, so we went ahead and let them test. You know, hoping to do a few more of those over the next couple weeks. Just an opportunity for those guys to get on the track. Because, I mean, so many racetracks are closed down and not testing. Some are. Dominion is, Ace is at the moment, Caraway is, Hickory is, Wake County is. Southern Nationals starting testing this week, I believe. But several tracks, South Boston, of course, Motor Mile, that's shut down, period. Both of them, that's the two, tracks on each side of me. They're obviously not testing. So we decided to do that, and I don't even remember what I did yesterday. That's bad, ain't it?
That is bad.
It was Easter, and I wanted to sit down and record a couple of podcasts and get a couple of days ahead of schedule, but that never happened. So sorry. But what'd you do this past weekend, man?
Man, we worked as a family around the house a little bit, and then we had a Easter church Sunday morning via web link, like many others around the world. And I fired up the big green egg, and we ate. That's what everybody does, right? You're quarantined. We eat and walk and eat and walk, and that's it.
Yeah, pretty much. Sounds about right. So. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to do, that's for sure, and that's we wanted to do this podcast tonight, just kind of a little quick hit here tonight, just to have you guys something to listen to. I know you guys would rather hear from a guest than hear from me and Roger every day, so we're working on that. We got a couple of I've spoke to Kenny Shepard from Madera Speedway. I know they're kind of going through a little thing where, they've got all this MAV TV programming that they have to fill. And, of course, they can't operate. And they're in a unique position where, I believe the city owns the facility. So they're going to be dictated by the government when they can open up completely. Whereas I feel like other racetracks are in a position where, they can make some moves when they're ready to. Good or bad, I guess, So, I believe you've talked to a couple of people about possibly being on this week.
Yeah, I think it would be good. I want to get a kind of a diverse group, maybe some people that are car owners, and I talked to Kevin Piercy about maybe him coming on and talking to us about some of the changes that are going to take place. David Gillen and I have also been talking on a daily basis just about some of the trials and tribulations that he's going through as a truck, a multi-team truck owner, an ARCA car owner with 70 employees, and
Ouch.
and I think it'll be good to find out how some of these people have handled some of these things, because it's different. You know what I mean? We haven't been able to establish this before, so it's all new. So I think the more information that we can get, the better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'd be interested to hear, what Gilliland has been, doing, how he's preparing for, an unknown. He doesn't know when he's going to go back racing. So, it's interesting. I mean, just from, my standpoint with RACE22, I'm just kind of, waiting on everything else, what I mean? But from the racetrack standpoint, I didn't do anything for a month because I was like, this sucks, And then now I'm kind of getting unwound, and I believe probably everybody's kind of in that same boat. I have a feeling that everybody kind of looked at this, this is only going to last a few weeks, and then
Right.
after those few weeks are over, they're like, well, this is serious. So I think everybody's kind of over it at this point. Everybody wants to get moving. Everybody, I mean, God knows the president thinks that he needs to get open back up tomorrow, and I'm not saying that he's wrong. I don't know whether he is or not. I'm not an expert on that. But, obviously everybody's kind of got to that point where they're ready to go. And, I mean, I know you're ready to get Performance Center back open and, work on some cars and, build some cars, clip some cars or whatever comes down the pike.
For sure, right? And I mean, that's one of the challenges that we're going through at Performance Center is to, we definitely want to be a little bit ahead of the racetracks and definitely have some things that we can do for customers right now. So, we want to go ahead and open up and be back up to full song when the racetracks do open, so that we don't have any gap in our coverage for our customer. You know what I mean? We have full shelves now, but I also would like to you know what I mean, start pumping out product again a week to 10 days before we know we're going to be back at the racetrack. So
Right, I'm with you on that. I mean, I think that's the right way to look at it for sure. And I
my
mean,
guys are dying to get back. I think they're like everybody else, bored. Bored. I mean, a guy can only be around versus sit around the house for so many days and and so many hours, you know, before he starts looking for things to do. So I think it'll be really good for everybody to get back to a racetrack, to testing, to you know whatever they allow us to do. I think we'll take what we can get.
yeah, for sure. You know, coming out of this, I wish I was a divorce lawyer because I think that's going to be the hottest property coming out of this deal. I think there's going to be a lot of divorces. You know, husbands and wives having to spend so much time together. I think that's not going to be good. I mean, I think you're safe because obviously your wife's got something wrong with her if she stayed with you this long to start with. But
She's
you know,
right. She doesn't see well. I think she's partially blind or something. I'm not real sure what exactly its
yeah,
problems, but I
there's
know I
something wrong.
definitely outkicked my coverage. That's for sure.
No doubt, no doubt about it. So. Well, I mean, like I said, we just wanted to hit this real quick. I guess a couple other things that come to my mind, you know, to talk about before we, you know, jump off of here. Of course, Dillon Motor Speedway, Ron Barfield announced last week that he was moving his April 18th race to May 2nd. And when I first seen that, actually somebody showed it to me on Facebook, and I was like, well, that's never going to happen. And then I started listening to how the South Carolina governor's talking about things, and that actually might happen. Who knows? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell what's going to happen down there in South Carolina. They've kind of taken a different approach than North Carolina or Virginia, and even Tennessee. And Tennessee could open back up a whole lot sooner. You know, so it wouldn't surprise me at all if either one of those was open in early to mid May.
And you know that's something too that you and I have discussed at length is that this deal is really really hard to trend. Not only because there's so many new things, but because there's so many different people involved. Virginia could open, and North Carolina could not, and you just don't know who's going to allow you to do what at what point.
Yeah, I mean, the little deal that you know the New York governor started talking about today, and I believe they're doing the same thing in the on the West Coast with Washington and California, maybe. You know, the states are kind of getting together and deciding these as a region. They have not done that yet here, but it would be very advantageous, I think, for them to do that. For them to get on the same page and kind of do things at the same time. Though I think South Carolina's probably, if I was to guess, South Carolina's going to get the jump on everybody else around them.
Yeah,
So
but they've been behind the curve in so many things, right? They didn't have cases as early. They're quite a bit more spread out, right? Like I mean, you know, I think they've been behind a lot of it anyway. So I don't see it being the end of the be all.
yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I don't either. I mean, I don't know. You know, this thing's so hard to predict. I mean, by the time this is over, you know, me and you, Roger, we're gonna be coronavirus experts.
I don't know what I'll be. I don't want to really be a coronavirus expert. I got to be an expert in something else because this thing. There's so many times you can't tell who's telling the truth and who's not. I'm sure, like many of the people listening, you know, the information that we get is so skewed in a lot of ways, and you know, I think it leaves. That's the uncertainty that it leaves, and we got to try to do the best we can to figure out what that uncertainty it really means, or what it means to our family or our particular case.
Yeah, I agree 100% on that. Another thing from kind of over the weekend that came up, you know, just like the Dillon deal, it hasn't really been put out there. And I guess Charlie, you know, Hansen, when we had him on Thursday, kind of said the same thing. But, you know, expecting NASCAR to push back their Cup Series race. You know, they're scheduled to go back racing May 9th at Martinsville Speedway. And, you know, if that was to happen, obviously they think that's going to happen with no fans. But right now they think that's not going to happen. And that Sunday, May 24th at Charlotte Motor Speedway, the Coca-Cola 600 is anticipated as being the first race, but it is likely to be the first race and without fans. You have any thoughts or feelings about these sports? Not just NASCAR, and not just the weekly tracks that could do the same thing, but just sports in general. Operating without fans.
Besides from a revenue basis, I think it's great, right? Like, I mean, I think that many of us would. I don't mind to go to some sporting events. I'm fortunate enough that my wife's company has some PSL tickets down there, and I get an opportunity to go 1 or 2 times a year. And it's great. Don't get me wrong. It's great to go to the events and experience some of the events. But also, I mean, I get tired of buying a $12 beer, right? So I think it's a double-edged sword, and I think the thing that I'm excited to see is the amount of different content that we're going to be able to watch that we didn't before this. Because so many people now, I think you're going to get to see more stuff streamed. And I just think for the viewer, the possibilities are going to be endless.
Yeah, I don't know how that works out from a financial standpoint going down the road. I mean, just taking an average weekly track, as an example, we'll go with Hickory, okay, because that's the closest one to you, I believe.
For sure.
If Hickory races, let's say they get the opportunity to race in a few weeks, but they have to go without fans. They can operate with their cars, but they can have no fans. I mean, there's a lot of things that goes into that and questions in my mind, but one of them is, how do they make it financially? I mean, is this just an opportunity for them to have an event and just kind of pass the time, or is this something that they can find a way, to make it work with? I mean, do they cut the purse to make it work? Do they change things?
We're in uncharted territory. We're back in uncharted territory, right? We know that the fan counts have slowly gone, but that has seemed to be the separation from a lot of the weekly series to some of the bigger touring series is, and I don't want to say on a complete basis, but on the events, the Cars Tour, a few of the Cars Tour events get really good crowds. Now I'm not saying that Hickory on a Saturday night does not get a good crowd. I'm just saying it's not the crowd for the throwback race. It's not the crowd for some of these other things. And I think that it will be less defined then as to who's having success where, right? I think it will be harder. This, in my opinion, will make it harder to be like, well, they didn't have anybody at Motor Mile, or at Dylan didn't have any people in the stands. Well, if it goes to an electronic deal where we're just viewing it online, now that becomes a game changer. So I think it's all about the content at that point, right? Like, if it's good, I think people will watch. If it's not good, I don't think they're going to watch. That's it. So it could be the death of some promoters that don't, in my opinion, want to morph with it. Because I think you're definitely going to have to move with it right here.
Yeah, and I mean, I think another variable there is, the fact that if you're NASCAR sanctioned, you can't stream your races on anything but the NBC Track Pass, which the tracks get no money from. So, I don't know.
I don't either. I almost think that you may see it go, the outlaw deal, because the content can be good and they're not regulated and they can pretty much do whatever they want. If they want to launch fireworks off or jump cars or set people on fire, they can do it to try to draw the fan like they used to in the old days, as opposed to, and I'm not bashing NASCAR, I'm not saying that. It's got its own rules for a reason. But right. I just think that this has to give some advantage, in my opinion, to the non-NASCAR sanctioned tracks.
I would agree completely. Of course, they've still got to put on a great show. And that's one thing that I found interesting. I was actually talking to Tony Stevens from Pit Row TV the other night, just going back and forth with him on text message, asking him questions, trying to, I sit around picking people's brains all the time just to see what kind of information I can get. And I asked him what he thought about, pay-per-view and like a, Night of Destruction, Crash-O-Rama thing. And he said, those sell tickets, but they don't really sell pay-per-views. And I found that to be completely interesting.
Wow, yeah.
That was because he's done some demolition derby events, he's done some different things, and he really felt like racing sold better on pay-per-view than those things did. I'm not really sure if I know why or understand that premise there. But it does make sense because obviously in person those things would be much more exciting. Whereas a race is a race, whether you see it in person
Right.
or online. I mean, the only difference is you ain't smelling the rubber and the fuel, and you don't get that sensation of speed and all that from the pay-per-view. So just found that to be really interesting. Because I'm all the time I'm thinking about how we can do things, man. Like I said about this track, that the one track today that told me it's possible that they could do an invitational only event and put it on pay-per-view, and I've thought about that, like we said, but at the same time, I would have thought, before I talked to Tony the other night, I would have thought, man, we should just do a Crash-O-Rama deal, and that'll be great. And I don't know if we talked about it on the show last week or not, but they had that Freedom 500 a week or so ago at the Freedom Factory in Bradenton, Florida. That's Cletus McFarland's racetrack, his playground,
Yep.
I guess now. Um, you know, I think it did very well from what I can gather from watching his videos. Him talking about it. Obviously, he ain't giving out any numbers, but we tried to do the math and figure out exactly what we thought come of that. And I mean, I think he did really really well off of that. And all it was a bunch of he bought some Crown Vics and put a half-ass roll cage in it and put some nitrous in there and let them rip. So it, you know
Good times.
yeah, I mean, it sounds like fun to me. I mean, but I think also that guy's got, I don't know, 2 million, followers on YouTube or something. So I think that makes a big difference. Race22 ain't had 2 million followers of anything. So,
Well,
it's
it's
hard
still
it's hard
early.
to get to that, man. It's hard to get to that. So,
It's still early.
yeah, I mean, we're definitely, I mean, but that's definitely interesting. That how the dynamics of all that works and how things could play out. I just don't see as much as I really want to feel this way. I really just don't see pay-per-views winning out. I don't see it, and I know Tony Stevens killed me for saying that, but I just don't see pay-per-views winning out even in this climate. I just really don't. I just
Yeah.
I just don't think people want to consume things on TV. And I might be wrong. I might be totally wrong. I mean, I think people would rather be in the stands. The diehard people that would be willing to buy a pay-per-view aren't willing to buy a pay-per-view because they'd rather be in the stands.
Yeah, but I don't disagree with that, but I also think we already know who that customer is.
Sure.
Right? He's the same guy that's been coming to the racetrack, and he's dying to get back.
For sure.
I'm all for us going this digital way to try to get those fans to follow along. I spent a bunch of time today reading some Twitter, and I know that's a
God.
really loaded thing, but I spent a lot of time actually reading through this Kyle Larson thing, and the one thing that I really found ironic was how many people had said during this time, while there isn't live sports on, they've really been drawn back to NASCAR through the iRacing, through different things, and it kind of rang bells off in my mind that, well, maybe that's what we need as an alternative to try to bring the new fan or reintroduce the fan to what we're seeing.
Yeah, but I mean, this shutdown's not going to last forever, so that's the problem. I mean, that's a
No,
great
I don't
venue
disagree,
for
but
that.
if it's kind of a land grab, I mean, it
It
really
is.
is kind of a land grab because I think there's so many people that are just used to consuming content in a certain way that now that content's not available, so they're searching new means. And if you can retain some of those that search new means, or we can grab them to be future followers, I think it was a bright move.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it works that way. So I don't. You know me. I don't hate iRacing. I just don't like iRacing.
No,
I
but
mean,
if
I'd
not, if
love to
nothing
play
else
it.
has caused some controversy, and I believe you told me years ago, not all press is bad press, and you know, we had the rage quit thing with Bubba, and then this, and I think it's at least sparked, good or bad, some fact where people are talking about it.
Yeah, let me make sure I fix that quote for you.
Yeah,
That
right. I know what it is. I figured you'd fix it. You let me go longer than I thought you would.
yeah, that quote is, um, all publicity is good publicity, and that's true except for about last night. I think
Right,
Kyle
right.
Larson, I think, took that to another level. But hey, at the same time, I mean, O.J. Simpson, might have murdered some people, and he's pretty popular now too. So, I mean, hey,
Wow.
hey, many people still think Casey Anthony's pretty hot even after she killed her daughter. So, or allegedly
Wow.
killed her daughter, I should say.
You're going to go to the Carol Baskin thing. I was waiting for you to go
Well,
to Carol
good
Baskin
old
next.
Carol. Well, that's the only one that I'm for sure of right there. So
The Carol Baskin.
the rest of them I don't know about, but I'm for sure of that one. And I'm sure most people have watched Tiger King by now, except for the Corey Lathams of the world. I think everybody else has watched Tiger King. And that's
We gotta
some
we gotta
interesting
try to
stuff.
get Corey to answer his phone so he can come on and rap with us a little bit.
Yeah, every time I call him, he either doesn't answer or he's busy working on his four-wheeler. God, I wish he'd buy him a new one because he wouldn't have to work on it so much. But, do something. We need to get him on here one night, but we gotta keep him sober long enough in order to make that happen. I think so. He's gonna kill.
That's actually the fun. We should give him a couple beers. That's a great time.
Yeah, well, no, I don't think so. I actually tried that one time. It didn't work. So.
Didn't go as planned.
Nah, it's not a good idea. Corey's worse than Kyle Larson when he's had a few beers. Okay.
Wow. Wow.
We kid because we care, Corey. I mean,
Yeah,
well,
for sure.
we sort of care.
For sure.
I'm not sure if we do or not, but
No, we do. I think we do. Just in a weird way.
right, for sure. Well, that'll probably wrap this thing up, man. I think we touched on all the little things that we thought kind of transpired over the last few days, and of course we didn't have a show Friday, just because I got busy. I think you got busy, and we weren't able to you weren't able to do that. But we're going to try to hit this as often as possible. Last week I said we'd do it every day. That task has proven harder than I anticipated, even given the lock-in order or whatever the heck we're under right now. So that has proven hard. I mean, here it is. We're 10:30 at night, and we're sitting here recording because I've been busy today. You've been busy today. It's amazing how busy we can still be despite the fact that we're not supposed to be doing anything.
I think I'm actually more busy than I was before, only because everything is so unorthodox now.
Right.
Some people that I do business with aren't around. Some people that you do business are around. Everything seems to just take more steps just because you're not exactly sure of the protocol of the way these things work. So it seems to be everything takes me longer. I sell a bunch of stuff online, and it takes me longer just because just everything is slowed down to a pace that I just think we can't be as efficient. And, that's maybe one of the things that go along with this thing.
Yeah, speaking of selling things online, I'm interested to hear. I know we've talked about it a little bit before, but I'm interested to hear how that's going. I mean, given, I know you started this last March, April, maybe February, I can't remember. Really selling on eBay and doing stuff, and I know you were doing really good with all this stuff going on in the world right now. How has that changed?
It is ballistic.
Really?
Yes, it is ballistic. I challenge everybody. There's so much of it out there. I challenge everybody, and it's very easy. It's just about applying yourself and doing some research and finding out how the different platforms work that you want to sell on. And if I was a racer that was trying to raise funds, what a side hustle. I mean, what a side hustle that you can. I like the platforms because you can see what things are selling for. So before I buy something, I pretty much have a really good idea of what percentage of them are selling, how much they're selling for, and it doesn't put me in a bad position to make bad buys. If
Right.
I even got my whole family doing it. I wanted everybody to learn how to sell things online, all the way from my 13-year-old son to my parents, and my uncles and aunts, and it's amazing what selling things online opens up for you as far as ideas. Um, Whether it's you want to sell baseball cards, I know that you laugh about this, but 45 an hour ago, my son and I went to a store that had baseball cards while we were getting our groceries. We picked up some baseball cards that we legitimately are going to double our money on tomorrow.
I mean, that's the
I mean,
way it
how
should
does
be,
that
man. That's awesome. I find it interesting that that sales are so good. I guess it's because everybody's at home. I mean, I did see a UPS guy that I'm friends with on Facebook the other day that said that it feels like the week of Christmas. They're delivering so many packages. So I guess it's this thing's been good for some.
To our UPS guy for his drag car, and he came in today. I was the only one there, and he beat on the door, and he came in, and I said, "You all right?" He said, "I had to take a day off." I said, "What?" He's like, "I had to take a day off." He said, "We're going as hard as we go normally in December." And he said, it is crazy. He said, they allowed us to take a day off if we wanted to. And I thought, wow. What? He said, but they're moving all the freight now, or a lot of it, a large portion.
Right. It's unreal, man. It's unreal. It's amazing. We talked about it last week, though. Some businesses are booming from this, and others are just completely and totally, like the racing business, is totally dead in the water. So it's an interesting time for sure. Well, we've managed to run through almost 37 minutes here of you and me just jabbering back and forth. I don't know that anybody's actually going to listen to this, and if they do, I feel sorry for them. But
standard gig then.
Yeah, I mean, it's just normal for us. I mean, except for when we had Charlie on last week. That was the only good part of our podcast so far, I think. So,
I'll work on it. I've talked to a couple of people, and it's probably my fault to drop the bomb. David wanted to try to come on today, but I got super busy at the shop trying to do things. And it's interesting to me, when you don't have customers coming in, you get on things and then you just kind of get lost in them. So I will do my part for everybody we'll get some guests on here and see what we can get them squeezed into saying.
Yeah, we'll dig up the best information we can about everything that's going on, and maybe get a few good racing tales along the way. I know Thomas Bean, he messages me, and he told me, he said, "Man, we need some good racing stories." He said, "Call up some people that can tell some good racing stories." And I told him it's a whole lot harder to get a guy to tell a good racing story on the phone than it is in person, but we'll do our best. So. All right, guys.
I haven't seen Thomas in a couple of weeks. I hope he's okay.
Well, I mean, he's missing you. I can tell you that much, okay? He's missing spending money. That's all I can tell you.
Like my kid being gone at summer camp.
Yeah, I mean, that's the number one customer at PRW, or at least he's there the most. I don't know if he spends the most money.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the number one customer. I would say that he's there the most. That's for sure.
I mean, I think he has won the most races in the last 2 years. That's
a
statistic. That's a statistic that he tells me every time I give him hell. So I'm not really sure.
I'm sure.
Any parting thoughts before we go tonight?
I just want everybody to be safe, right? Like just because you hear a lot of things about opening things up, I think we still all need to be as safe as we can, and I think we'll get back to where we need to be. That's for sure. And if it's in a week, great. If it's in 2 weeks, great. If it's in 3 weeks or a month, great. But I think we all have to be somewhat patient, but yet still be in a good enough position that when they say we can go, we're ready to go.
Absolutely, I'm with you. I echo those sentiments, and hopefully everybody in the racing world, and for that matter for the rest of the world, stay safe. So that'll do it for tonight's RACE22 podcast. Hope you didn't shoot yourself tonight having to listen to me and Roger babble on. But if you didn't, we'll be back on tomorrow, hopefully with a really good guest, I hope. And can't tell you who it is yet because I don't even know. But we'll be back tomorrow and hopefully give you something better to listen to. Until then, have a good night, guys.